Okay. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Richard Lorman, and as she mentioned, I'm a communication strategist at film festivals all over the world, like Cannes, Berlin, Venice, Locarno, Toronto. I'm generally known as, under various roles, as a press agent, or sometimes I do marketing, film publicist. There are different words, but my primary principal activity is as taking care of the press relations. So what I wanted to talk to you about today, when I'm setting up things to communicate to the press, I need definitely certain materials and a strategy that I try and work out with either the director himself or the production company or the sales company. I'd like to start by telling you what I think a communication strategy is not. Often I'm given simply the film and a poster. And this, in today's world, is definitely not enough. A communication strategy should be something very coherent and very concise, that's written, that's visual, that's audible, and even oral. Another mistake that often happens with the communication strategy is that it comes from various sources. Generally now, if your film has a sales agent, they usually work with a press agent or they work with the production company and they help you establish these materials. So there'll be a certain coherence. But sometimes all of these different materials come from different sources. Sometimes, for instance, the film stills will be done simply by the editor. Or sometimes the subtitles will be done by a cousin who's spent time in the United States. These kinds of things don't often work. They need to actually be done professionally. A strong distributor, a strong sales agent will help a production company establish these materials so that they can be used all over and communicate correctly your film. Just because your film is great isn't going to be enough. You're going to have to find a way to communicate the greatness of your film all over. You're going to have to find a way to help your distributor promote your film everywhere else. You're going to have to find a way with your sales agent to help those companies sell your film all over the world. The basis of all of this is normally in English. Even for English language films need to find the correct international English. At international film festivals, you should not forget that for about 90% of the industry people, the press, English is a second language. So it can't necessarily be American English or UK English or Australian English. We need to find a certain English that will go all around the world. English language films, believe it or not, often have more problems, let's say it can, than necessarily a French film. A French film will have English subtitles, which will help someone for whom English is a second language. It'll be easier for them to understand it. If you have a film, let's say, in Scottish, without English subtitles, and you don't speak English well, the chances are you're not going to understand this film. Now today, often sales agents and even films without sales agents, the productions will make that decision to go ahead and subtitle their films in English. There's a bit of a polemic about this, but I think it helps. So the basis for your communication strategy should be finding a strong international English to use for all of your materials that you put out, and these should be done professionally. You can't count on a Google translation. you've got to invest in a real interpreter, and from the beginning. It starts with whether it's scripts or subtitles. I often receive films, and sometimes I know scripts, and I talk to different sales agents, to different producers. When people are looking for co-production based on their script, the English is really so bad it's hard enough to understand sometimes a script. So if it's not done in an English that's professionally translated, people are going to probably lose interest in about 3 pages. They'll be able to tell instantly if they should go on reading or not. The same thing with films. I often receive a film where people come crying to me saying, oh my gosh, the Cannes Film Festival rejected my film, I don't understand, my film's great. I start to watch the film and I see that the subtitles are so bad, I can't understand anything after 5 minutes. This is a mistake that happens more often than not. Make sure that your script is professionally translated. Make sure that your subtitles are professionally done. A mistake to avoid, which often happens, is sometimes you can have your script professionally translated, and then to cut corners and save a little money, you're just going to slap that translation on as subtitles. A translation from a script is not subtitles. That's a whole other sort of translation, and those must be taken care of professionally by labs that actually do subtitles. I find another mistake that often productions, distributors, and even sometimes sales agents make is that they think, oh, well, let's let this provisionary version go with these provisionary subtitles to try and get it into a festival. And then if we get it into a festival, then we'll redo them. I find that 7 times out of 10, that's a mistake. The film would have to be very, very, very strong to pass a programmer's acceptance with bad subtitles. I've seen really very good films actually get rejected by film festivals, and then once the subtitles have been redone professionally, they've been accepted by another festival. I won't really give you examples, but I've seen that happen very often. So I definitely try and avoid that. Keep in mind that all your promotional material that you're going to establish should first be done before you actually submit to a festival. This information can help you, this basic information, and it's going to be the foundation for your marketing. A lot of people start with the poster. Fine, the poster's fine, it's important for you. But a poster without this strong communication information, this basic information, is really worth nothing. Your film isn't going to be necessarily distributed first. You want to get it into a festival first. So you need to help these programmers. You need to give them the right information. This will help them choose your film. So what is this foundation that you need? You need a strong synopsis in English. You definitely need 3 versions. You need something very long, which is the full storyline, and it's usually probably around 2-3 pages. You need something shorter, which should be, I would say, less than a page, even 2 paragraphs, that eventually you can adapt for catalogs, festival catalogs, and websites. And you need something very short, a log line of about 2 lines. If you prepare all these, eventually when you're going to be discussing with a press agent like myself or with a sales agent, you furnish these basic information to them, then they can help you adapt that. But the ultimate responsibility is going to start with you. You know your film better than anyone else. So you could just give your film to someone and hire them, but it's better that you start to know the film. You've been working on it. If you're producer or director, you've been working on it for probably about 2 years. So this basic information needs to first come from you. even if you would hire me, I would start and ask you for the certain information that you need to provide this to me. The second part of this foundation is visual, and this involves still photos and video footage. Many people spend a lot of time on the poster, and I'm not saying that the poster is not important. The poster will probably not help you get your film into the festival. It's sort of the hat. So I think that I always want to start with the actual still photos. The best and strongest photos for you to use will actually be images from your film. Very seldom, I'm sure many of you have, if you're producers, you've hired still photographers, and their photos don't necessarily match the film. They can definitely be used later in marketing, and they should be held, but you should go over those very carefully and make sure that you want to communicate correctly what the film is. For instance, I've worked on films that have been black and white, and people furnish stills to me that are in color. You can't really communicate a black and white film in color. You'll have to really find the right stills. Oftentimes people hire still photographers that are not professional photographers. Just because your cousin takes good photos with his iPhone doesn't necessarily mean that these photos are going to be usable later on in the communication of your film, in the eventual marketing of your film. There are actual people who do this job. If you decide to eventually pull actual images from your film, these should be done professionally. Oftentimes, people will let their editors choose. I'm not saying that the editor can't do this, but he's making choices from a different perspective. He or she is not making these choices out of a use that will eventually be for marketing. So this too should be discussed with either your press agent, the person who's doing the marketing, your sales agent, anyone who's going to eventually be responsible for creating your communication strategy. As far as for the video footage is concerned, people also spend a lot of time on trailers. And this is fine. I think we should know that the difference between a trailer and, let's say, a show reel. A trailer is definitely something that should be used more for the distribution of a film. If you have a first film and you're trying to get into a festival, and you have no fixed distribution, I definitely would not spend a lot of time and money on a trailer. Sometimes these can cost up to 25,000 euros. But what you can do if you have a small film and you want to promote it at a festival on your own, you can do excerpts or even a teaser. I think one of the mistakes that people make is that they choose too many excerpts. The same thing with the photos. They want to communicate too many things. The stronger strategies usually hone in on exactly what are the key elements of the film and the ones that you need to promote. So as far as your excerpts go, normally now people choose at a festival, I would say less than 3. For a smaller film, you can usually choose one of about 60 seconds, and that will go far if it's a very, very strong excerpt. I know I worked on a film a couple of years ago called White God, where the film was finished at the last minute. It played in Cannes, and there was just not time to do a trailer. And because it was such at the last minute finishing the DCP, there wasn't going to be enough time to actually even take care of taking a lot of excerpts out. So we were forced to choose only one excerpt that we knew we could do the finishing of in a professional way, and I chose one of 60 seconds that worked with the dog, and we use this throughout the festival. So sometimes only one excerpt can get you through an entire festival, and then later on you wait for the actual distribution of the film to choose more. I strongly advise to use excerpts that are less than 60 seconds. I mean, you probably see them all the time on the internet. You see, and once they go on to 2 and 3 minutes and there's a lot of dialogue, you probably end up losing interest. So I would definitely go for something around 60 seconds. The basic written documentation about your film is also very important. This is actual information that you need to provide even to when you submit your film for possible selection. It's never too early to establish your billing block, your main contacts, your main casting credits, your director's bio and filmo. I would keep that very short, the director's bio and filmo. You don't need to do 5 pages of an entire CV, an entire list of all the awards you've won. Keep it short so that people can see the main information. You also need a director's statement. This too should be probably 2 paragraphs, something very strong and personal that comes from the director saying exactly why he or she wanted to make this film. So submitting all this basically is going to start the foundation for you to even possibly be selected. The film isn't enough sometimes. They'll want to see this additional information. And once you're selected, then you can build on this basic information and use this to establish the press kit and everything else that you'll send out, and then your marketing person will be able to build on that. But the key to it is to have strong basic materials in a very international English, the written. Also, all of your excerpts, if they need subtitling, should match the subtitles of the film, and you'll build on this, and eventually your distributors in different countries will build on that. So that's my presentation on materials. I don't know if up until now if anyone has any questions about those or. Are most of you distributors, or filmmakers, or producers? I think they'll need to train.
日本語ですか？はい、大丈夫ですか？あ、これで言わなきゃいけないの。Hi, Richard. I want to ask you, some festival want us to provide the EPK, but some don't. And what is the direction of the festival needing the EPK or?
Well, I think you always have to provide some material. You have to provide a limited amount of stills, 3 to 4 stills.
Oh, by electric EPK.
But you mean what, the digital press?
Yes.
Well, I'm very green, and I think everything, definitely a press kit should be done digitally now. I mean, you need it for iPads, you need it, actual printing of it. Not printing it will save costs. I mean, I know very few, even sales agents now aren't printing press kits anymore. So they're all being really, working with graphic designers, they're being set up for iPads.
And how many minutes do you think it's a good idea, not for the trailer, but kind of teaser to be?
Well, it depends on the film. I mean, for me, teasers, excerpts, video excerpts should really be no longer than a minute.
I see.
And I definitely wouldn't choose more than 2. And they've really got to be the strongest pieces of your film. It depends on the film what you want to show off.
Right.
But it usually should involve. It usually should involve the strong visuals of the film. I mean, film is visual and audible.
Right. Well, I have another question. For example, if the film is very particular for the thematically in one country, like Asia, but it's better for people to market in different countries to emphasize the other thematic to have the audience to come. So in that case, like somebody like you, could you make like a couple of different press kit?
Well, this is the trick. It's always very tricky because, let's say I'll deal with a Japanese film. Since we are in Japan, a Japanese film communicating to the press and to the public, a Japanese film in Japan is one specific thing. Communicating a French film in France to the industry, to the public, is also a very specific thing. So preparing your film for promotion or to get any kind of attention or even to be selected at an international film festival, I think you've got to be a little bit more, you've got to simplify things a little bit. You'll never be able to, and you'll have to find the strongest points of what you think how this film should be communicated internationally. You should look for the things that are most universal. I mean, we live in one world, so there are lots of universal subjects. Your film is a love story. You should really focus on the most basic part of that. I would avoid the fact that, even if the story is about a girl from this province who can't get along with a boy from this province, I would avoid that and just focus on the actual love story. I'm sure by the end they're going to come together. The different provinces, depending on how important that is to the film. But in summation, you should really look for the most universal points, whether it's visual or whether it's in the plot. Written communication should be as universal as possible.
Thank you.
It's your fault.
Thank you very much for your speech. I just would like to ask, I'm a filmmaking student, so personally for me I'm really interested, because you have mentioned that teaser and about the trailer. So, well, actually for me it's really difficult to tell what's the difference from like a teaser and a trailer. So, may I ask, how do you define what is a trailer and what is teaser, and what kind of teaser is a good teaser for you?
I did kind of skip over that very quickly. I'm a little nervous too, so. An unfinished film will sometimes prepare what's called a show reel.
Oh, yes.
Like they're still in the editing process. Let's say I have my second cut of my feature film, which is 90 minutes. I'm still editing, but I want to try and find a distributor. I want to try and find a sales agent. So I'll do what's called a show reel.
Yes.
And I'll probably pull out, not randomly, but I'll pull out my best scenes, maybe anywhere from 4 to 6 minutes, because I don't want to show the whole film yet unfinished, so that I'll do a show reel, and that's usually not to be shared publicly. It's for specific purposes, a distributor or a sales agent, to get their attention. Then you explain to them, oh, well, I'm still editing the film, but they say, hey, the show reel looks good. As soon as you have a cut that you feel comfortable with, please share it with me. An actual trailer is usually for a finished film, to be shared with the industry, to be shared with the public during during distribution. A lot of times sales agents at your once you've been selected for a festival, your sales agent will use this, or your distributor will use this to attract other industry people. They might, they may or may not share it with the public. Since sometimes trailers, especially if it's a first-time film, sometimes trailers can cost up to 25,000 euros to make. And if you have no distribution coming up, or if your sales agent feels that, listen, right now, let's just wait, that's too much money to invest, let's see how the film goes at its first festival, and then we'll work with that later. There are still things that you can do, I think. I always need, as a press agent, for television and for websites, I need actual excerpts from the film. So even if you have invested in a whole trailer, that's not enough really for the press. The excerpts that I like to choose are less than 1 minute.
Okay. Yes. So also, well, when you talk about the show reel, so what would you prefer? Like just the people who making just focus on the visual, or you would like to see a bit more about the content?
It depends on the film. It depends on what your strongest elements are in the film.
Yes, exactly.
It's the acting. Generally, it's the visuals.
Okay.
Depends if it's a musical, you'd probably want to show a musical scene. Depends on your cast, but it always depends on performance, whether it's a famous actor or not. You'd want to pick the strongest scene because you want to get your get a distributor or a sales agent interested. So it's not the time, I don't think, or the situation to be mysterious. A lot of times in trailers, people want to be mysterious. Actually, with the press, for teasers and excerpts, I tend to try and want to be mysterious, as less mysterious as possible.
Okay.
There's just too much. There's too much out there. There are too many trailers out there. There are too many films out there.
Yes, exactly.
I have this argument a lot with directors, sales agents, distributors, producers. Oh no, I don't want to give too much away. I don't want to. And I keep wondering, when do you want to give it away? For me, there have been, I mean, we all know how Titanic ended, but a lot of people still went to see it. So I don't think today you can really give too much away. The only film that I think that I've ever been to, maybe, that I've been completely surprised at are Sixth Sense and The Crying Game. Other than that, those are the only two that I could think of plots that I would not give away. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, this helped a lot. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Audience ask you in Japanese,
Oh.
so you can hear interpretation.
Okay, I forgot about that. Okay. Well, now she's giving me this. I need a question in Japanese, please. But I don't think I know how to use it, so. Oh, really? Okay, we have a lot of time left. I'm a quick speaker, so.
Richard,
Yes.
shall I ask in Japanese?
Yeah, definitely.
No, I'll stick to English. What are some really mishandled festival communication strategies you've seen where you're like, what are these people thinking?
You're bad.
Well, they've got to know the bad ones so they can tell the good ones, no?
They gotta know the bad ones so they can tell the good ones.
Listen, honestly, I'm very, very picky about subtitles, and I think I'll start with that. I always come around to that. People think that I'm really a pain in the neck, but, it's 2017. We're completely globalized. There are so many people, professionals that speak so many different languages. There's really no excuse that we should not take very seriously subtitles of our films. That's the first thing. That's the most important thing about your film. The days are gone when we should see these film 1970s and 1980s films from Hong Kong that have the weirdest English subtitles in the world. But believe it or not, I still get films like that, where someone's cousin spent 2 weeks in the States last year and they feel they can do it, or they go to Google. Don't do it. Really don't do it. Your film is not strong enough. Don't even think that it will be, or people will be able to guess, or you'll be able to explain the film. Do it now, because it will end up just costing you more later. Have that film professionally subtitled. That for me is the biggest mistake. Because the festival, a lot of times, a lot of arguments that I get, the programmers, they'll see it and they'll accept the film because they think that eventually the production, the distribution, or the sales agent will fix those subtitles. They just take it for granted. And by the time the film gets to me, I'm like, well, what's going on here? Oh, well, the festival accepted my film. That's not the mark. The festival has accepted your film because, yes, they see beyond your bad subtitles, but it's still your responsibility to fix it. It's your responsibility to the press. It's the responsibility to the audience. I literally have said no to films because people want to continue to argue with me to not repair their subtitles. They will bring 20-odd people and pay for their flights, their hotels, eating meals at a film festival, but they won't invest another 1,000 euros in redoing their subtitles. This is a real mistake that I actually still see every festival. I work for different festivals where I'm not taking care of films, and it still shocks me to see bad subtitles. Again, it's not the responsibility of the festival to take care of your film. This is the primary, for me, this is the most basic form of communication. Work on those subtitles.
Thank you.
Yes. God, this is going to be good.
Hi, Richard. Can you tell us, as a press agent, if you have different strategy depending on, first, the festival, like Cannes, or Venice, or Toronto? Is it the same? And what is your strategy when you work on a first-time director? If you do the press for like a big well-known filmmaker, I think it's different. But for a first-time director, you have like different ways to do the promotion and the press. And what is your goal? When are you happy with the press?
Oof. Gosh, that is a long question. First of all, I think, and a lot of people argue with me, but I love all the major film festivals. And although I think certain films could probably play better in certain festivals or certain sections. I think it's a real pity that everyone wants to be in competition. Of course, everybody wants to be in competition, but there's just not enough room for everyone to be in competition. And I've seen young directors, young producers, Oscar-winning directors, Oscar-winning producers cry because their film has not been taken into competition. I think this is this part of your question? Is this answer part of it? I mean, I'm
No,
okay.
there were many questions, but yeah.
Okay. I think this is starting to change, luckily. I definitely don't play favorites among the festivals. With so many films being made today, that's why it's important to have this foundation of communication ready, because this is really what's going to help you get into a festival. It's not just the quality of your film. It's tricky to choose, because sometimes festivals politically are, well, if your film is good, everyone's going to want your film. But you have to really, and hopefully you'll be surrounded by people who can help advise you where your film is going to be played, where it's going to play the best. I know I've had films that have been chosen for competition, and I've had arguments with them saying, oh gosh, really, you shouldn't go into competition. You should know that films in competition are really, by the press and by the industry, looked at much harsher. If you're in competition, they will judge you very, very harshly. And sometimes certain festivals will take a film in competition because there's star power, because there's someone who will walk down that red carpet. The argument goes back and forth with sales agents because, of course, the industry and even the press will follow the competition, so it will get more attention. But the bad side of that is that sometimes it can get just as much bad attention as good attention. It's very tricky. I mean, we can speak literally for 2 hours about that question. I know that when this sort of situation, this discussion, this questioning started, God, I guess it must be about 10 years ago now. I worked on a Ho Xiaoshen film called Flight of the Red Balloon with Juliette Binoche. And the festival didn't want it in competition. They wanted it in a certain regard. The Cannes Festival wanted it in the then non-competitive section called A Certain Regard. And God, there were discussions for about 2 weeks. And I'd seen the film, and I had worked with Ho Xiaoshen before, and I knew how his films had played in competition, and I definitely fought and trusted the festival because they've seen all the other films. At a certain point, too, we have to trust the programmers and trust the festival. I know I just said before we have to be careful about their decisions, but at the same time, there needs to be an open discussion with them, with the sales agent, with the distributor, with everyone, to decide where the best place for a film is. But that's a veteran filmmaker, and that was handled in a certain way. For a first-time filmmaker, what was your question about the first-time filmmaker? Or do I handle it differently?
Yeah, well, you must have a different strategy to raise the interest of the press when, I mean, it's someone unknown with no cast and sometimes a low budget.
Obviously, I mean, honestly, no. I have to say no because I look at every film, I really look at every film fresh. I look at every film differently, and I try and find what I think are the best elements in every film. That's usually the first time I watch a film, I just watch it as a film lover. I mean, I'm definitely a film lover, so I try and watch it just as a film lover. Then the second time I'll watch it, I'll kind of put on my professional hat, and I'll take all the notes and my like Boy Scout side, my happy side, and I'll write all the things that I think are just the best things about the film. Then usually the third time I'll put like my evil side on, and I'll write all the things that I think are just the worst. I'll place myself into just the worst critic ever, and just like he's having a bad day, and I'll write all the worst things that I can. And then I'll look at those lists. But the bottom line, it usually comes back to the things that touched me on the first one. It usually has to do with the film-loving side. And then when I start to work with the director, whether it's a first-time filmmaker or a veteran filmmaker, for them too, every film is different. I try and communicate what they want to communicate through their film. That's always the key for me. So I can't really say that. I would like to say that I've like made or broken films, made films, but I can't really say that. I mean, I have to say that if I have, it's only because I've helped the director and then eventually the distributor, producer, or sales agent with them. It's important that we all be on the same page. But for me, it always starts with the director. I need to spend time with that person. I usually do the interview for the press kit. I usually try and help them with the statement, as much as I don't like statements. But I use the interview as a way to understand their film. Sometimes I ask them questions that aren't going to be in the press kit, but I need to know those answers. I need to know their film the way I like it, but I also need to know their film the way they like it. It's a very tricky situation, but that doesn't change. Whether it's a first filmmaker or a veteran filmmaker, it doesn't change.
But I think it's easier to bring a journalist in a theater when you have like Kitano-san in competition in Cannes. But if you have a first-time director in Panorama, and your goal is to have reviews and to have journalists come to the screening, so I think it's not the same difficulty. So, for instance, do you have like press screening before a festival? Is it something you like to do, or you prefer to wait?
Yeah, I guess my blackmail journalists, I threaten them. They have to go and see. I mean, quite honestly, that's what it is. But I mean, with a smile. But yeah, it's true. I mean, now there are just too many films. And the film festival program, that's why your communication, your basic communication is so important. At a major film festival, there are 90 films. I know how happy you are to be even in the market, that your film is showing in the market, but there are 90 films out there that are competing for attention. So the minute yours doesn't look good or it's complicated, or people are going to just push it aside. Yeah, I do that. I mean, certain films, it's tricky. Certain films need a real strong push, and certain films need something a little bit smoother. And I used to think that I do feel strongly about my instincts that I know in advance. But there are some things you just can never really know. I think about Tony Erdmann. I worked on Tony Erdmann and this German film by Marinata. And I remember seeing the film unfinished. And of course there was a whole discussion about the length and everything, but I just loved this film without credits, without opening credits, without end credits, without sound, finished sound. It was fine for me. In fact, you could have put that in the cinemas and I would have still enjoyed it just the way it was. But then once we started, I guess over the 4 months that we worked on the film and was finally finished, all of a sudden I started to get nervous because it's sort of like stage fright. I don't know if because you believe in something so much, you know that. You're producers, you're filmmakers, you work on something for so long. And this for me was short. I wasn't responsible for any of the making of the film. But for you guys, from writing, from the concept to the writing, to putting it on screen, to finally getting into a festival, sometimes this is 2-3 years of your lives. And so of course you're going to get nervous. I get nervous too, even after the 4 months. And I remember going to the press screening of that because I wanted to see, my gosh, how is it going to do? And it was remarkable. I mean, it was one of these instant Cannes successes. So, which I wish on all of you, I mean, wherever you have your film. But you need that basic material. You need your basic communication strategy. You need that foundation to help your sales agent sell your film, to help your press agent sell your film to the press. All that's very necessary. Did I answer all your questions?
Yeah.
Almost?
Oh, yeah.
はい、では遠慮なく日本語で、リチャードさんはラブディアスを手掛けてらっしゃるので、サブタイトルのことについて伺いたいんですけども、ラブディアスをやってらっしゃるから、フィリピン の映画のサブタイトルは多分いいんじゃないかなと思うんですが、率直に言っても一般化は難しいかもしれませんが、日本の作品のサブタイトルのレベルをどうお考えかとか、もしくはそのアジアの国とか地域でここから出てくる映画はいつもサブタイトルが素晴らしいなというような、印象があれば教えていただきたいんですけれども。
Okay. His question was about the subtitling. Oh gosh, I'm so critical about that. I'm terribly so. And I've worked at subtitling labs really all over the world. And I see there are different philosophies behind it. Now, of course, I live in Paris and I work a lot with the Parisian labs. So I guess I'm more apt to defend their system. The Japanese subtitling, I don't really know the labs very well, but of the Japanese films that I've seen at festivals, the work seems to be definitely on a professional level. I know that I work with the Japanese English translator, and I help adapt like the English subtitles on Takeshi Kitano's films, because again there a lot of times translators will just translate, and for me I want to adapt. We need a version that's not for a UK release, that's not for an American release, that's not for an Australian release. We need a version that's going to make its world premiere in a film festival where for 90% of the public, the industry, the press, they're not native English language speakers. So it needs to be in a neutral international English. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Maybe before I question to you, I had a comment a little bit about Love Diaz. Love Diaz is from Philippine cinema.
I'm sorry?
Love Diaz. So you are in charge of promotion of Love Diaz film. I think his film has no problem. I mean, the film from Philippines, there is no problem about the subtitle of English because English country. So you don't think so?
No, what, his subtitles? No, I think they're fine. Yeah, I've never had to do any additional work on his subtitles. I mean, usually people see them. Believe me, I'm the first one to complain if something's not right. Why, you saw one and it was so-so? No, okay. Love Diaz, by the way, is for me just a huge artist. I generally don't touch a lot of what he does. I take it as it comes, and it's hard for me not to give my opinion, but we generally let what he wants pass. I mean, he's very hands-on. He's an artisan from start to finish, so why did you mention him?
Yeah, I wrote she is the what is the title? Who got the very good repetition from the Venetia Award, Venetia Film Festival. Tachisata owner.
Oh, the woman who.
Yeah. I watched that. That is very interesting. And I worked in the Philippines before, so the Philippines is an English country. So I suppose the film from the Philippines doesn't have any problem of English subtitle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Lav speaks perfect English. I mean, he, really perfect English. He's an academic, he's a scholar, in addition to being a great artist. So, to tell you the truth, he corrects my English often. So
my question is, the point is that comparing the Philippines, Japan has, of course, disadvantage of English ability. So after that, I want to ask about the subtitle of the Japanese film. What do you think about that? Disadvantage of English ability if we make an English subtitle?
no, it's 2017. I don't think any of us have disadvantages anymore. I mean, possibly if Martians would come down here, there wouldn't be enough Martian Japanese or Martian English translators. But now, I think we live in a world where, I mean, so many different people speak. We all have languages in common these days. So I don't think any country has a disadvantage over another.
Thank you, Rich. I'm happy to hear that.
I have a disadvantage here, though, because of the language. So, I don't know, another question, or? Now I'm feeling a little better, so now it's time, I'm less nervous, so now's the time to ask me anything.
Hello. Thank you so much for your talk. So if I have a first film, and then if I'm thinking to apply to submit to Berlin or Rotterdam, and as a producer, how much budget should I estimate to hire all the press or to do necessary press activities in the festival?
You mean overall to participate in a festival?
Right, like from submission. Okay, let's say I already have a spot in the festival.
Okay.
And then I have like 1 month to prepare all the DCPs and materials.
Yeah.
And then to promote, to think about the best way to promote my film in the festival.
It's true, it's costly. I mean, once you include the travel, the housing, your DCPs, your promotional material, it can cost you anywhere from, well, DCP is around 5,000 euros. So let's say it's going to cost you at least that. Oh, and you need 2. It's going to cost you to participate in a European festival, we'll leave it at European, anywhere from, let's say, 10,000 to 150,000 euros.
Okay, so let's just talk about to hire, like, for example, if I want to hire you as how much would I as an estimate?
God, I'm really such the worst person. He can attest to that as a sales agent to ask about that. I'm just a very particular person when it comes to that. Honestly, I try and be fair. I have a weird relationship with money. I'll try and make this quick. But I always believed that, don't get me wrong, I need money and stuff, but I try and forget about that. As much as I want to try and help films eventually make money, I look at every film differently. And I try not to think about that. So a lot of the people that I work with just trust me, and I just start to do the work. I try not to think about how much I'm going to be paid, and I just want to do the work, and then afterwards they get my surprise bill. But I've had no arguments about the surprise bill afterwards. So it just depends on how the film does. I mean, I really try and do sliding scale. Depends on how much I love the film. It definitely depends on how easy the people are to work with. If I get my way 100%, sometimes it's free. The minute I get in an argument, I add another yen. Another email, unnecessarily email, another 100 yen. That's how I do it. I kind of do a little calculation. But if people trust me and let me do my job, and I'm happy doing it, and I feel we have a great collaboration, who knows? Sometimes I might pay them, you know.
Okay, thank you.
But it's usually a lot. But no, that's not true, though, really. Honestly, it's not. I joke about that because for some reason I have a bad reputation of being too expensive. It's like I'll meet people and they'll say, oh gosh, no, I never dreamed of calling Richard because you're too expensive. We live in a world, the film world, which, how do you say mauvaise langue? People like to gossip and say bad things about other people. I always refer to an actress like Catherine Deneuve. The first time I was going to work with Catherine Deneuve, I was very young, and people warned me, oh my God. So I thought I was going to be working with some like evil witch. People said things to me like, oh, she's stupid. Oh, she has no sense of humor. Oh, she's cold. And I was really very shocked. But I was very young. But it taught me a really valuable lesson to realize not to listen to a lot of rumors. Because then I started to ask these people, well, it's not my experience of this woman. So when's the last time you worked with her? Oh, I never worked with her. I never met her. So then I started to discover that even about my own reputation, where people would tell me, oh gosh, I never thought of hiring you because everyone says you're so expensive. I'm going to end that on the crisis, there's the European crisis. And for Cannes, usually people will call me January, February, to start to see their rough cuts like during Berlin or around that time, during the Berlinale in February. And people were nervous, the Europeans were nervous. So I was getting calls about, oh, I don't know, I'm gonna have this film in Cannes, but you know, because of the crisis, you're gonna have to work for cheaper. And my question to them was, well, okay, that's fine, I understand. So because of the crisis, then you're not going to be staying at that same suite at the Carlton this year. Wrong. They wanted me to lower my salary, but yet they still were going to sleep in the same, I don't know, 15,000 euro suite at the Carlton. And my response to them was, listen, you sleep on the beach in Cannes during the festival, I will work for free for you. That never happened. So, you know, money for me is really relative. I want to work. I want to feel like I'm a part of something. And I mean, it's one of the reasons I come here and we work with these young filmmakers. A lot of them have only done shorts, and their dream is to make a first film. So I know hopefully some of you will be listening to them this afternoon. Support them. Ask them questions. They need the questions more than me. Support them. You know, they need encouragement, and you know, they have a dream. Help them fulfill that dream of making a film. It's very hard to make a film. If you're filmmakers, producers, distributors out there, you know. So I think by supporting others, you can only feed your own work. So anyway, thank you.